and I wrote a blog post about it, and it was called The Death of Too Advanced. Coffee, got my coffee, cheers, it's coffee time, coffee world, Malan's coffee world, coffee cheers, boom, yeah. 7:40 in the morning on a lovely Wednesday, July 26th. How you doing out there? It's KMAD, and we're coming at you live this morning with all the fanciest music and greatest news in the world. What's happening? I'm in a good mood because yesterday I was in a bad mood. So today I'm doing everything the opposite, and it's working. I feel great. And I want to share with you a story that I read this morning. First thing I did, you know, I know I shouldn't do it, but I got on Twitter in the morning. And I read the news, and I saw a story about something that I talked about 12 years ago. I wrote a blog post on June 26th, 2005. So almost like 12 years and 1 month. Exactly 12 years and 1 month ago. And today, 12 years and 1 month later, it has all come true and an announcement has been made. The blog post I wrote, I have it on the screen. I can't believe I was able to find it. But it's called The Death of Too Advanced. Now, if you're not a web geek like me, and if you weren't around 15, 12, 13 years ago, you don't know who Too Advanced is. So let me just preface this story by saying Too Advanced was one of the top Flash web creators way back in the day. I worked, one of my first web-related jobs was at an interactive CD-ROM company, an interactive marketing firm that did CD-ROMs and Flash websites. We used Director and Flash. Both were owned by Macromedia. That's who built Flash. Adobe just bought it at some point. The company that built it was called Macromedia. And they were awesome. Small company, amazing softwares. We loved it. Around 2003, 2004, 2005, Flash was the big thing on the web. It was supposedly going to be the future, 3D video, streaming, all this fancy stuff. But what happened was, there were a couple other people. If you're a geek like me, you'll remember TooAdvanced.com. They were one of the top dogs. And then there was another place called Ego Media. These two places were shown to me by a guy that hired me at that interactive shop. He was showing me some places for inspiration, and when he showed me Too Advanced, my head exploded. When he showed me Ego Media, I lost my mind. The sites don't exist anymore, and that's part of this story. But back then, at that time, they were so futuristic, beautiful, and amazing, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. It defined my design style for the next few years, just trying to be like them. But over the years, something happened. You know, Too Advanced and Ego Media were exclusively using Flash, these websites that had preloaders, and then it would open up like a world. Ego Media was more about building slick interfaces. Too Advanced was about building like crazy interactive 3D madness. There was another place called WhoIsWe.com. I believe they were called Who Is We, and they did some amazing Flash and 3D stuff too. But it was huge for a while. But the sites took forever to load. They weren't always easy to use. And at some point it became almost more trouble than they were worth. And what I started to notice was when I would go to Too Advanced their portfolio, many of their portfolio sites no longer worked. The sites were just gone. Or they were replaced with clean CSS styled HTML versions. I started thinking about it, and I saw the CSS trend happening. This was when CSS first came out. There were these CSS showcases like Style Gala, CSS Vault, and CSS Import. They were huge CSS beautiful site showcases. They also had Flash beautiful site showcases, and Too Advanced one. Every time that they built a site, it was featured, and it was huge. But when CSS came out, we all kind of saw the future, or no one saw the future. I kind of saw what was happening. And I wrote a blog post about it, and it was called The Death of Too Advanced. Now, granted, that's a sensational headline. I knew it when I wrote it, but I really wanted to prove a point that I thought Flash and the flashy design studios were on a path to death. Like it was over. It just hadn't ended yet, but it would. And when I woke up this morning and I saw this news story, it said Flash is being killed off, and it has a tombstone with the Flash logo on it. It's sad to see, really, because I loved Flash. But sure enough, Adobe put out a blog post today that they're ending Flash. They're just going to kill it. It's going to be no more. On Twitter, it says, the software was widespread on the internet in the early part of the last decade and is used for things like playing videos and games. Adobe announced that it will discontinue the software at the end of 2020. So they're going to wait another 8 years for some reason, but it was honestly dead 8 years ago, a long time ago. So when I saw this news, I got up and I read the blog post from Adobe, and it says that they're, sure enough, yeah, after blah, 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 after many years of creating blah, 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 we're going to end it because it's over. No one likes it anymore. No one uses it. Most browsers don't even support it. Like, it's just going to die. So I got on Google and I started looking for that old blog post because I thought, I was right. I was right. And I found the blog post. And I'm going to actually post it on my website tomorrow. I'm going to do an update and then link it. And I'm going to post the original post. And then I'm going to redirect the old URL to the new post, because still to this day, people talk about that blog post. Back in the day when I had the blog, MalanDarras.com, 2005, 12 years ago, it was called The Brain Dump. And it was just where I dumped my brain about design thoughts, music thoughts, kind of like how I do now, but the design has been replaced with affiliate marketing. But I just kind of dumped whatever was in my head. I wrote about my dreams that I had at night. I wrote about software. I wrote about my band's updates. I wrote about poetry. I wrote about a little bit of everything. And I didn't have a big readership. I mean, locally, people read. Everyone that knew my band read the site, and all my coworkers read the site. And sometimes my blogs would be featured in like the Tulsa, Oklahoma newspapers, and people would find me that way. But it wasn't a tremendous amount of traffic. But the night I wrote The Death of Too Advanced, I remember waking up the next day, and all of a sudden, this thing had like 60 comments on it, or 30, which normally I would get 3. And I thought, what's going on here? And then I started seeing the ping backs, the pings. You can see which sites are linking, have added your URL, and I went to all of them, and they were all over the world. There were Chinese message boards that were talking about this blog post. They were all fighting over whether Flash was the future or CSS was the future. I mean, I didn't even know that it was such a divided world, but what I had accidentally done was stuck a wedge in between everyone in the design community. Half the world thought that Flash was the future and high design and 3D, and the other half was like, no, it's going to get more simple and more simple. And a war broke out. I would say for the next month and a half, the blog post was being shared, commented on, liked, like it was everywhere. And I got a big kick out of it. It was the biggest blog post I had ever written at the time. Unfortunately, I have a bad habit of deleting my blog every once in a while, just killing all the posts. And this is one of the ones that got lost because this was a huge one. It's great to look back at it, but thank God I was able to find it. And I'm going to post it tomorrow. But in general, what I said was, here's the first paragraph. A few years ago, if you asked me what the future of the internet was, I would have undoubtedly said Flash, 3D, and video everywhere. I would have talked about how, as computer users' bandwidth grew, the acceptance of heavier file sizes would allow for much, much more high-end animation. But a few years later, it feels like Flash's use as an animated website tool is dying. And I went on to explain why. And it blew up. I mean, it was in China, it was in Thailand, it was in Pakistan. People were talking about it in the UK. People were talking about it in Ireland. Like, it was crazy. And now, the trend did die. Over the next few years, CSS took over, and you don't see a lot of Flash websites anymore. If you do, they're an annoyance, and I usually close them down. If your site has a preloader, I'm not viewing your site. I'm not going to wait 30 seconds for all of your crap to load so I can view your site. And then the flash sites are so like cool looking, you can't even navigate them. You don't know where to click. It's a joke. So over the next few years, it trended down. And a few years later, Too Advanced closed their doors. Ego Media closed their doors. They all went the way of the cuckoo bird, or whatever that word is, whatever that phrase is. They all closed because no one wanted flash sites anymore. And if they did have a flash site, they immediately redesigned it in CSS so people could access it and actually use it. And it took 12 years for Adobe to say, okay, it's enough. We'll go ahead and close it. We know no one uses it anymore. We know the browsers don't want to support it anymore. It's basically a big turd that we've been trying to polish and maybe save, because I'm sure they spent millions of dollars when they bought out Macromedia. You have to understand, Macromedia was the coolest company. They were small. Adobe was Photoshop. Wait, did Adobe even have Photoshop? I think so. They just had Photoshop, I think. Don't quote me on that. But Macromedia had Dreamweaver. That was Macromedia. Flash. That was Macromedia. They had Director, which was like a DVD, CD authoring amazing tool. And they had a few other things by Macromedia. Google Macromedia. Your mind will blow because you think Adobe created these softwares. They didn't. They just bought them. I'm sure they sunk millions into it. And they had a good run. You know, they got a couple good years out of it. And now it's dead. It took 12 years for them to make the announcement that it's dead. And even now, they're going to run it for what, 8 more years? No. By 2020, what? That's 3 years. What does that say? Yeah, 3 years by 2020. It's going to be gone for good. So I wrote about it in 2005. Over the next few years, I was proved right. It took them 12 years to make the announcement that Flash is dead. And now, in 3 years, it will be no more. Is that justice? Can I predict the future? Am I the smartest guy in the world? Well, probably so. Either way, probably not is the truth. Either I got lucky or I just saw it and caught it and did it. I'm feeling real good today about my futuristic technology in my brain. I can predict the future. It's official. Malan Darras can predict the future. I will be doing tarot card readings live on YouTube every Wednesday, Thursday on my new channel, MalanPredictsYourFuture.org. For only $2,000 a second, I will read your future. Anyway, you can go to Twitter and read the thing. The article is everywhere. Just Google Flash is being killed off. I love that. That's pretty good. It's not as good as The Death of Too Advanced or The Death of Flash. I would have liked that better. So get it together, you Twitter writers. You guys aren't very good at it anyway. Probably need to go talk to BuzzFeed. Anyway, that's where I'm at. My next step of the day is to go outside, drink some coffee at Coffee Bean, because yesterday I didn't go outside at all, and it damn near killed me. So today it's straight off to the sun. Anyway, that's the news for the day. No politics, no racist stuff, no religious stuff, no wars, none of this. We're talking about Flash, and I'm glad you tuned in. I will see you soon. Take care of yourselves, your neighbors, your friends, your families. Drink some coffee, go outside in the sun, and I will see you with coffee in the future.